Communities Advisory Group's March 21st, 2025 meeting. I am Julia Hatton. I'm the DACAG Vice Chair. I'm filling in today for Roman, who is our chair. And I want to wish everyone a great Women's History Month. And I have a note here. Sarah, who is our secretary, is going to have to leave early, so Stephanie will be taking over the minutes. And let's see, before we do a roll call, we'll just do a quick reminder. Senate Bill 544 requires members of the DACAG who are participating remotely to remain visible on camera. If you have challenges with internet connectivity during this meeting that are preventing you from being visible to the other members in the public, please just publicly announce the reason that you're off camera as soon as possible. And we will go on to roll call. I'll read the names one by one. Abimael?
Present.
Present. Chelsea?
Present.
Okay. Curtis?
Present.
Curtis. Elena?
Present.
Fred? He is not here. Julia, present. Roman is not here. Sarah?
Here.
Is here. Sanite is coming later. Stephanie?
Here.
Okay. I believe that means we have quorum today, so thank you everybody for being here. We're going to move on to item 2, which is general public comment, and agency staff will provide meeting reminders and instructions for anyone wishing to make public comment.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zara Jimshade. I'm a CPUC regulatory analyst and support staff for the DACAG. Supporting us today are some colleagues, Dorothy Marumi and Ryan Young, CEC's DACAG support staff, Jacob Willman, CPUC IT support, and then legal support from both agencies with Vanessa Baldwin from CPUC and Renee Webster Hawkins with CEC, as well as other leadership from both agencies. A few reminders. This meeting is being recorded and is being held both remotely and in person. DACAG Vice Chair Julia Hatton is facilitating the meeting and will conduct roll call votes for items the DACAG is voting on to ensure a clear record. We've enabled WebEx's closed captioning feature to make this meeting more accessible. For use of the closed captioning, please click the bottom left CC icon or press Control-Shift-A. Once captions are turned on, attendees can click the icon with the 3 dots for more options at the bottom right of the caption box to view captions and highlights. The chat feature is not available to attendees and is solely for panelists to ask technical, procedural, or legal support questions. For public comment instructions, this public comment period is an opportunity for attendees to give comments regarding any matters related to the DACAG or today's agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so that we can call on you. For those on WebEx, use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those of you joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and then *6 to mute and unmute. For those in the room, raise your hand, and when called on, you can speak into either this or that microphone. Let's check for public comments on on WebEx. See if there are any raised hands. Not seeing any. We'll turn to the room. Any public comments for the room?
Nope.
Okay, back to you, Julia.
Okay, thank you. That takes us to item 3, which is opening remarks by CEC and CPUC leadership. And I'd love to acknowledge the commissioners who are joining us today. You're welcome to say hello and give any brief remarks. We will start with the CEC and Commissioner Gallardo.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see you all. I just wanted to uplift a couple of things. One, we have a workshop coming up that Aretha from my team is leading. It's focused on our justice, access, equity, diversity, inclusion proceeding. We're going to focus on community engagement, outreach, and that's part of what we presented at the last meeting. So really excited about that. Invite you all to attend if you can. It's going to be hybrid. I think Roman, we're trying to get Roman to join, not necessarily with his DACAG hat on, but instead with his other hat on. So I wanted to give you a heads up about that. And then also just wanted to talk quickly. I just came back from the Imperial Valley. As commissioner, I'm overseeing the Lithium Valley Vision out in the Salton Sea region, trying to establish a lithium industry, extracting lithium from geothermal brine, and there's a whole host of issues that we're addressing. Through that process, we've invited a lot of different state representatives to join. One of them is Dr. Larissa Estes from the Racial Equity Commission. She's the director of the Racial Equity Commission, and they decided to have their quarterly meeting out there this week, and it was really powerful. So I just wanted to uplift the work of Dr. Estes and the commissioners from the Racial Equity Commission, and thought it would be fruitful to bring it up here in case any of you all, if you haven't already engaged in their meetings, I think it would be helpful to track. They're going to develop at the very least a framework for racial equity and how to implement that, specifically targeting state agencies. And so I think it's going to be really beneficial for us. It's going to add value. They are also going to develop a report that's due at the end of this year. It goes to the governor and the legislature. So really exciting things that they're working on. So I thought I'd share it here because it's somewhat similar to what you all are advancing. And so I encourage you to check them out. And that's it for me. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
That's great. Thank you, Commissioner Gallardo. Yeah, I think that that specific call out of racial equity and the larger conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion is really important, and they're doing some really great work. We'll move to the CPUC and Commissioner Douglas.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon. I just had some brief opening comments. I was sorry to miss the last discussion last month on the CPUC's integrated resource planning process, but I was so glad that President Reynolds was able to attend and take part in that discussion. And I think where we can, for some of these high priority proceedings, we'd like to invite the presiding member or the lead member on certain proceedings to be part of the discussion. I was glad we were able to do that. And I'm looking forward to today's discussion. I'm particularly looking forward into the presentation that the CPUC staff is providing on the EPIC program because it's a very important program, and also because I am the assigned commissioner on that proceeding. And so I'll be just looking forward to hearing the discussion, and I'll be online and in the meeting and although probably off video, and just appreciate participating today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Douglas. Was Commissioner Halka able to join?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, hi. Wonderful. Welcome.
So I just wanted to say thank you to the Energy Commission. I had the opportunity to participate in their Tribal Energy Summit earlier this week, and had the honor of being on a panel with tribal leaders and with SCE's tribal liaison to talk about energy in Indian country. And so thank you to the Energy Commission. It was a great event, lots of turnout, heard lots of positive feedback about that. And next week I will be participating in the governor's Tribal Nation Summit, as well as the following day a wildfire summit that's sponsored by the Office of Energy Infrastructure and Safety. So looking forward to having those discussions and attending some additional meetings in the next couple months with tribes on our tribal consultation policy. And hopefully once that's released, if there's an interest, we can present that here or talk further about what that policy means. I am also looking forward to joining Commissioner Gallardo for the first hour of their workshop on April 3rd. And we have some decisions that'll be coming out hopefully in the next within the next 2 months, one on our affordability proceeding and one on our disconnections proceeding. And I want to make sure that you're aware of both of those, and if there's an interest in getting those on the agenda to talk about anything, that we have some notice, because once the decisions come out, as you know, there's a short time before it'll come up for a vote. So just wanted to put that on your radar. And I guess the last thing in our high DER proceeding, we recently had a pending loads workshop. We're looking at, as I've talked about before, changing, incorporating new methodologies into our distribution planning. And part of that includes looking at pending loads and making sure that there is community engagement to have a better understanding of how to get better reliability for some of the poorest performing circuits, and how to ensure that we've got capacity to add load, particularly in communities that have been historically underinvested in. And so that workshop was recorded. It should be on our website. And if you're interested, I would encourage you to go take a look at that. And I think that's all I've got.
That's great. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Do we have any other agency leadership who would like to say hello or that we should recognize?
Julia, before we move forward, is it okay if I want to tack on to what Commissioner Houck said? Thank you so much, Commissioner Houck, for uplifting the California Energy Commission's Tribal Summit. I thought it went really well too. I just wanted to offer up that if the DACAG is interested in learning more about the work we're doing there, it's a proceeding to focus on tribal energy sovereignty. And so I think it would apply again to the work that you all are advancing. We'd be happy to do that. We have a wonderful Director of Tribal Affairs, who's also our tribal liaison, Sierra Graves. She could come and present if that was of interest. And maybe, a little bit down the road once we've had some additional workshops. But the summit was very powerful, and we always welcome you all to attend as well if it's of interest. And then an additional thing I forgot to mention is we do have our nominations open for the Clean Energy Hall of Fame Awards. It closes April 3rd, so please get any nominations in if you want to uplift local leaders throughout the state who are advancing 100% clean energy future. We want to hear about them, so we will put in a link to the nominations application in the chat. Thank you, Julia.
Yeah, wonderful. Maybe we could make a note for agenda setting about the tribal energy sovereignty presentation. I think that would be wonderful. Okay, thank you. I think we will move on to item 4, which is our meeting minutes. We are looking at the minutes from the February 21st, 2025 meeting. And first, we will turn it over for public comment.
Thank you. The DACAG now welcomes public comment on item 4. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those on WebEx, use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and then *6 to mute and unmute. For those in the room, just raise your hand. Saying nothing in the, oh, yes.
Can I make a comment? Not on this, but like in the first part where it was just like general public comment. Can I make a general comment? It's not specifically on the minutes from last month. I think I had something to say initially, but I couldn't find the thing I was looking at, so I forgot what I was gonna say earlier. Is that fine?
Legal, is that fine?
Mr. Nair, Vanessa there, I think that's totally fine.
Yeah, that's fine. It's
Yeah,
incorporated into the record and
Great. Yeah, so I was looking at a little more research. Is this the correct mic?
Yes.
So I was doing a little more research about the investments into some disadvantaged communities. I think one of the reasons is looking at it from like the supply side. So if the developer who's trying to make money from it, the only profit they're gaining is from subsidies that the governments are giving, right? So the rates are lower for them. So in the economic market, right, like their only profit comes from directly from the government, which is subsidizing these communities. And therefore, they're kind of not willing to take that risk, right, to invest into these disadvantaged communities. So then, right, because they're not going against the market, they're basically taking money directly from the California taxpayers, right, because we're subsidizing for that investment in these communities. So that's probably one of the reasons why a lot of developers kind of like don't really want to work in these disadvantaged communities. Because if they develop somewhere else, they also have the general electric market to back up to provide profits and revenue for their business. I just want to kind of like throw that idea out there.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Hi there, my name is Jason Zhang. I've been trying to work for the CPUC for like a year. But I found a job in the middle, and then I guess I'm back looking for jobs again.
Thank you for your comment.
Any other public comments online? Richard, see, allow you to. Jacob, we get Richard to be able to give their comment.
Richard, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Richard, we can't hear you. Is someone able to unmute their microphone?
I sent him a request. That's all I can do.
Okay, and I think the hand dropped as well. I think we can proceed.
Okay, all right, thank you. Do we have any DACAG member discussion on the February minutes? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes? And just a note that if you were absent, you can still vote on the item if you have reviewed the materials. A motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the February minutes.
Thank you. Who will second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And let's take a roll call vote. Say aye if you are in favor, nay if you oppose, or abstain if you will abstain. Abimael?
Abstain.
Chelsea? Curtis?
Aye.
Elena? I'll come back. Fred is absent. I vote aye. Roman is absent. Sarah?
Aye.
Sanite is not here
Aye.
yet. Oh, hi.
I'm here.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
And Stephanie?
Yes, and I'm sorry, Chelsea, I missed your.
Aye.
You are right. Ah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then just coming back to Elena.
Lena's giving a thumbs up.
Great, sorry, can't see her. Super. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you, everybody. The minutes are approved. All right, on to item 5. So we have a presentation from Southern California Edison regarding their community engagement plan, which will be informing its climate adaptation vulnerability assessment. So I'd like to welcome Stephen Torres and Jennifer Pezda from SCE to present.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to share our approach for executing the requirement community engagement that will support Southern California Edison's 2026 Climate Adaptation Vulnerability Assessment, or CAVA, with this Disadvantaged Communities Advisory Group. My name is Stephen Torres. I lead our climate adaptation and vulnerability work here at the company, as well as our integrated resource planning work here at Southern California Edison. And Jennifer Pesta helps us with the regulatory aspects of our climate adaptation proceedings. So we're delighted to be here. This is, if we go to the next slide, please. This is SCE's second climate vulnerability adaptation vulnerability assessment. So we thought it would make sense for us to start by discussing kind of our past community engagement work that inform our first vulnerability assessment, so you can understand kind of where we've been and what we learned from that experience, which is informing how we plan to approach community engagement this time around. The final section that you see here in the slide is kind of what you can do. It's really not aimed at the DACAG members, but it's more intended to give you a glimpse on how we're using these materials, this content, to sort of gather feedback on forums that we're hosting between now and May to, again, inform the CEP with community feedback. Next slide, please. And I assume that I'll go through my remarks in about 15 minutes, hopefully, and I'll leave some time for questions at the end. So again, I think it'd be helpful for this group to provide some context for those of you who have not been exposed to the climate adaptation vulnerability assessment regulatory requirements that investor-owned utilities need to meet. The vulnerability assessment is a study that SCE conducts every 4 years to examine how its assets and operations will be impacted by future climate conditions across our service territory, so we can identify at-risk assets and operations that SCE may need to harden. And it concludes with a regulatory filing every 4 years. Our last filing was in May of 2022, and our next filing is in May of 2026. This effort includes a significant amount of community engagement, which is the focus of the discussion today. SCE's community engagement work, it starts with a community engagement plan that SCE puts forward 1 year prior to the filing. So we are in the process of finalizing that CEP, which will be filed with Commission in May of this year. So we're here today to share some of our current approach to developing a plan and get your feedback. And again, our engagement plan for the CAVA, those focus exclusively on disadvantages of vulnerable communities, and that's defined by the decision and is one of the decision guidelines. Next slide, please. So again, just to kind of take you back where we've been to provide some context, our first vulnerability assessment process was a 4-year cycle with core elements tied to kind of meeting both compliance obligations as well as extending beyond compliance to ensure effective engagement. So we began kind of from the left by conducting a very robust listening tour, expanding over 60 organizations, including the DACAG now 4 years back, to gather feedback on what our community engagement plan should look like. Key lessons from those sessions which we'll touch later, inform kind of that first CEP that we submitted, and it continues to inform even our second CEP. Once we file that partner informed sort of CEP in May of 21, we then developed, recruited, and launched a representative panel for our work, which we call the Climate Resiliency Leadership Group. And this group was identified through an open RFP process and has been core to all our subsequent work, consisting of 11 organizations operating across the DVCs in SCE service area. We work with them over 6 months to co-design and co-develop both community engagement plans for their communities that they should execute, materials and that they would use, and service that would administer, all via sort of a curriculum and setting kind of incorporating best practices we design based on recommendations from that listening tour that informed the CEP. Or CRLG administer service across 80 DVCs to help us gauge a community-owned sense of resiliency, and we published this work in our BA, in our CAVA that we filed in May of 2022, plus a call to action white paper we call Adapting to Tomorrow that included some of the highlights of the work that we did. Our CAVA findings then led to an internal process to identify climate-informed investments that we needed to do, and we include over $100 million of climate adaptation investment in our 2025-2028 general rate case that we filed about a year ago or so. So as we await for the decision on that proposal, we continue to engage with our CRLG at least 3 times a year to bring speakers, grant opportunities, and other resources. We think that this ongoing engagement is tied to our desire to build the CRLG organizational capacity in the adaptation space by helping raise awareness or catalyze action in their communities. We also invest in those groups so we can return to them in future CAVAs, as you see later. Next slide, please. So I'll dive deeper in the CRLG. Again, it's a core element of how we execute community engagement here at SCE. So kind of double clicking in a couple things. What is it? Originally, we sourced group to this open RFP process, which kind of targeted outreach and social media campaigns to attract community leaders in disadvantaged vulnerable communities. And then we engaged in a 6-month paid engagement to do the work. In terms of how we did it, we co-designed engagement materials. We collected service, as I said, from over 80 DVCs and sort of engaged with the work hand in hand with the CRLGs. We feel that we created relationships that have deepened over time after the CAVA with these CRLG members, learn a lot from each other, employ best practices associated with how engagement, and we think that this is kind of a novel approach that we want to use going forward. Next slide, please. Another sort of innovative aspects of our CAVA that's worth discussing here is what SCE's community resiliency metric, because it's kind of, again, it's a critical component that we informed through our community engagement, and we thought we'd spend a couple minutes talking about what it is and how we're using it. We developed the CRM to address the need that we saw for a relative ranking of DVC's ability to withstand outages prompted by extreme climate events, given that over 50% of our service territories is categorized as DVC. So these relative rankings can be used, for example, to prioritize investment decisions among DVC communities. The role of community engagement in the CRM development was that the survey results obtained from the DVCs by our CRLG members helped us refine the scoring. So we designed the CRM using that input from our CRLG. We continue to believe that the CRM is a good tool to use going forward. So we can again embed the results into how we plan investments in the future, which is a reason why we plan to continue to refine the community, the CRM scoring, and engage with the community on validating those results. Next slide, please. So we are incorporating what we learned so far across kind of 3 sequential phases, right? We develop in terms of when we developed the CEP, when we actually conducted the engagement, and then some of the work that we did post LNG engagement to understand the efficacy of our efforts. So in terms of before, even through to the work that we did before we filed the first CEP, we heard loud and clear 3 key messages: work directly with DVC community leaders, offer paid engagements and a sort of learning opportunity, and then co-design and co-develop materials so they're relevant to the communities they're outreaching to. So we certainly have taken that into account. As we engage with the CRLGs to actually perform the engagement, some things that we learned is that we needed to meet leaders where they were at in terms of their skills and experience associated with this, not an easy, a complex topic, which is climate adaptation in general, right? And design a process in which we actually kind of get feedback and findings that are useful for us to kind of, if you would, tune or messaging, so it's actually digestible. So the kind of complex material, requires some education to start, and then designing materials so engagement outcomes are realistic, and so that's kind of how we use the CRLG network. With the survey results, we also learned that tribal entities require a different approach, right? Tribes submitted one response on behalf of the leadership and members instead of various results by members. So this led to treating those results separately from non-tribal areas. So again, being sensitive to how tribes make decisions and communicate outputs. In terms of sort of post-engagement work, we learned that the CRM, which again was kind of unique, sort of generated a lot of interest across both energy division and other folks as well. So again, we continue to focus on on strengthening the CRM through community engagement going forward. So we also felt that this panel approach had its own benefits, just because again we feel that building a set of folks that have expertise with the subject matter as well as expertise with outreach is something that we can leverage over time. And then we also learned that we can't just engage them and disengage them for 3 years and engage them again, right? So this kind of continuous engagement is something that we think is important and need to continue to do. So overall, our plan for the second CABA and the CEP is to kind of build in this past learnings and incorporate these learnings in what we're going to do going forward. So if you go to the next slide, please, that tells you a little bit of what we're sort of doing. What are we doing similarly? Again, we're keeping the things that work, right? So it's kind of who performs the community engagement. How do we need to sort of get them engaged early in the co-design of materials that are relevant to the communities they serve, sort of how to sort of ground truth results, so, and then how do we sort of continue to engage the CRLGs throughout, not just when we're doing the work, but after they're doing the work, so they're able to continue to help do this work on an ongoing basis. So those are some of the key findings. And then what we are doing differently is that we need to add some additional representation. So we're looking to sort of expand the CRLG so we have a better representation of DVCs. We also need to kind of expand sort of or engagement with hard to reach populations, and we're sort of focusing on how to do that in the next CEP, and then sort of looking to one of the big transitions we're doing. If you think about when we did this engagement in 2021 and 2, a lot of virtual engagement, now trying to figure out the best ways to leverage now in-person engagement, and what do we do in person versus what do we do virtually. Those are some of the key sort of learnings that we want to sort of apply going forward. Next slide, please. And what we try to do here is just to map, if you would, sort of the CPUC decision requirements with the outline that we're looking to put forward in our CEP. And again, the key message here is that we feel that our CEP does meet the commission requirements, but perhaps, I can maybe deep dive in one or two of these to just kind of help you sort of understand, like section 3, for example, in the community engagement process, discusses how SCE sort of end-to-end community engagement process covering how DVCs are identified within or service area, how they're communicated with, how SCE provides education information on the CAVA process, and how we educate and train internal, external stakeholders to communicate with the DVCs. It also incorporates best practices for outreach and collecting feedback, and again, lessons learned from community feedback. So that's the type of detail that each of these sections has. And then finally, just to kind of leave you with, so how does, next page, please, next slide, please. How does, community engagement fit with the overall process of hardening the grid for future climate conditions? You can see there that, again, it's an integral part that starts early on, but it really does kind of flow into that input that we get from communities to ground truth or CRM scores do impact how we go about and make investment decisions in terms of prioritizing how we might make investments across a set of DVCs based on their resiliency scores. So I think that's good in terms of us doing the talking. Maybe I can sort of open it up for questions now and sort of transition to more of a dialogue. I hope that was helpful.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much. Before we move to DACAG discussion, let's see if there's any public comment on this topic.
Thanks, Julia. The DACAG now welcomes public comment on item 5. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those on WebEx, use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and then press *6 to mute and unmute. For those in the room, raise your hand and then I'll call on you. Do we have any comments in the room? Let's check WebEx. Not seeing any raised hands on WebEx. So back to you, Julia.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. All right, let's turn to the DACAG members for discussion. Are there any comments or questions for Stephen?
I have one. Thank you, Stephen, for the presentation and for joining us today. I appreciate your mention that it can be difficult to translate some of the more technical issues that come up in climate adaptation, or really many of the issues that come before the DACAG and both of the commissions, into something that is accessible for folks who don't do this kind of thing all the time, and who are not steeped in energy and climate policy. And I wonder if you had any takeaways or best practices or conclusions that have come from your iterations of this process over the years when it comes to that sort of translation exercise and meeting community folks where they're at.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of common sense, but sometimes we get lost on technicalities and perhaps we lose a sense of common sense. So I think common sense is really, and this is what our CRLG partners do very well, is helping us understand what what matters to those community members, right? What's important to them? It's really the outage, right? It's really the length of the outage, is the impact of in the livelihood of those outages and how that might get restored, right? Versus, you know, who knows? It was the 10th percentile of a temperature event that happened, or it's just not what they care about, right? So I think kind of continuing to focus on the impact that our work, the impact that climate change and climate conditions may have on how our population lives is an important piece of it. And then when we were ground truing the community resiliency metric, is about understanding the gravity of an outage in one community versus the other one, right? The gravity of someone that is not able to go get a Marriott hotel for the evening or not, right? The gravity of not having access to public transportation. So again, that all gets mapped in, you know, around 37 different socioeconomic indicators that we use to inform it. That gets mapped there, and I think that's important.
Thank you.
Other questions? Comments? Okay. Stephen, thank you so much for your work and your presentation and for being here.
There's one question from.
Yeah, I had my
go
hand
ahead.
up.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time seeing.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Just a great presentation, and thank you for bringing this to for the discussion today. I have just a question about the surveys. Like you said, you conducted 800 surveys. Those surveys were done among residents, or is it just the partner CRLGs? And if so, what was the result? Like, how much response did you get? Because I know it's very hard to get responses.
Yeah,
in this surveys.
It's a good question. So those were, if you would, actual touch points between our CRLG partners and actual residents, actual community members. So obviously we were subjected to the usual response rates associated with electronic surveys. So we only had a limited set of responses back. We were much more effective when we actually were able to engage community members in forums that are community forums. For example, Saturday sort of fresh food markets were better venues for us to actually get better results, right? So it was a combination of, yes, you know, the traditional sort of electronic sort of means, but also augmented by CRLG partners being able to identify community forums where they could actually do more of a one-on-one engagement. And again, the sort of the Saturday farmers markets come to mind as an example of some of those forums where we're able to be a little more effective in terms of the response rate.
Great, thanks. Just another question is that you have these partnership with working in communities, and how widespread is that? Like, do you cover like every part of your service territory, or?
Yeah, no, it's one of the learnings, as you saw. So our initial approach, you know, targeting 100%. In reality, we probably got to about a 65% coverage, and that's the reason in the lessons learned, we need to expand. We need to do better. So the next time we're expanding that CRLG outreach, we need to bring new members in this time around to get closer to that 80-90%. Yes, more work to do.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Thank you again. And this will take us on to item 6, CPUC focus this time. We have Energy Division staff reviewing a proposal identifying strategic objectives and criteria for the EPIC program. So I'd like to welcome Frederick Beck from the CPUC to present this item.
Hello and good afternoon to everyone. As said, I'm Fred Beck with CPUC's Energy Division Climate and Equity Initiatives section. We're very pleased to be here to brief you on the stakeholder process leading to the development of the Energy Division staff proposal, identifying strategic objectives and additional criteria for the Electric Program Investment Charge, or EPIC for short. This process sought and incorporated input from equity stakeholders throughout. And as you recall, this program is funded by California ratepayers of investor-owned utilities. Next slide, please. So we're here to present on staff's proposal on strategic planning, and this was just issued in a commission ruling on March 7th. Zara sent the full proposal to the DACAG on March 12th. The proposal builds off EPIC strategic goals that we presented to the DACAG back in February 2024. And today we're presenting the key highlights of the proposal, including equity metrics, how we've coordinated with the DACAG, and future opportunities to work together. Next slide, please. First, we'll provide a short refresher on EPIC background, particularly for the new members of the DACAG. Next slide, please. So EPIC was initiated in 2011 to help California meet its climate and energy goals and benefit ratepayers through clean energy research, development, and demonstration. Its mission is to invest in innovation to ensure equitable access to safe, affordable, reliable, and environmentally sustainable energy for electricity ratepayers. Programs administered by the California Energy Commission and the 3 investor-owned utilities, or IOUs, with the CEC responsible for administering 80% of the funds and the remaining 20% divided among the IOUs as shown in the table on the lower right. And the program budget is currently $185 million a year, and the program invests in 3 major areas: applied research and development, technology demonstration and deployment, and market facilitation. So let me say a little about those. The applied research and demonstration, research and development develops clean energy technology and operational solutions. Technology demonstration and deployment projects, we're still on this slide, thanks, demonstrate and verify technology performance, and then market facilitation works to scale and deploy EPIC innovation. All the administrators conduct projects in technology development and deployment, while only the CEC conducts projects in applied R&D and market facilitation. Next slide, please. So an independent evaluation of the program published in 2017 found several areas in which the program could improve. This table shows 4 of the key findings coming out of that 2017 evaluation on the left, and subsequent commission orders addressing those issues on the right. And today, most notably, we're going to focus on the first row. The evaluation found no clear program priorities, so making it difficult to optimize program investment on the most pressing issues. This led the commission to order a public process to develop long-term strategic goals out to 2045 and more near-term strategic objectives to guide program investment. These findings are important to understanding how we got here today. The upcoming EPIC 5 guidance PD that we're really talking about today comes out of these 2017 findings that were ordered when the evaluation was ordered when the program began. So we're really following a theme all the way through the program to ensure that it's administered in the best way and that projects have the most impact on the most pressing issues. Next slide, please. So I'll now discuss EPIC's new paradigm for strategic planning, specifically with measurable targets, and the staff proposal for requirements to guide the EPIC investment portfolio going forward. Next slide, please. So in its 2023 decision, the CPUC provided guidance to improve EPIC program performance with the theme that progress and impact should be clear and measurable throughout the program cycle. So as the table shows, the decision directed development of measurable strategic goals and objectives, requires the CPUC's ESG action plan to guide investment plans, extends the provisions of AB 523 to invest a portion of funds in and benefiting disadvantaged and low-income communities over time. So that provision had sunsetted. EPIC extends it for the CEC and expanded the requirement to also include the IOUs in that requirement. The decision also approved foundational principles for impact analysis framework to measure EPIC progress and impact, and ordered a second program evaluation. That evaluation has been concluded, and we expect it to be issued in a ruling for comment shortly, hopefully within the next few weeks. Next slide, please. So this graphic really illustrates the new paradigm to set measurable targets, including for equity. So the focus is ensuring that all EPIC projects demonstrate measurable impact on the goals and objectives. Here, EPIC's strategic planning elements progress from the least granular. So at the top, the state goals out to 2045, and to the most granular and nearest term at the bottom, which are individual EPIC projects. For EPIC 5, the Commission, and this is new for EPIC, the Commission will set both strategic goals and objectives to guide the administrators, who will then propose specific strategic initiatives and research topic areas to meet those targets. And a word on strategic goals, they are really high-level, long-term desired program impacts established to measure progress in achieving California's clean energy, climate, and equity 2045 goals. The objectives that are the subject of the staff proposal that we're talking about today are nearer term measurable targets to meet the strategic goals, and they really apply to the investment cycle. So they would change, be re-upped every investment cycle based on changing conditions. So as shown on the left of the graphic, program process, progress, and impact is measured on several timescales, including near-term individual project results, midterm community level outcomes from those projects being deployed at the community scale, and then the longer term impacts at the ratepayer and societal level, such as lowering greenhouse gas emissions overall or reducing pollution on large scales. Finally, while scaling for deployment should really be considered throughout the research and development process, we envision the progress on market transformation efforts will be most likely measured at the midterm timescale. Next slide, please. So you may have recalled, as I said earlier, we briefed you on the 2024 decision approving the 5 long-term strategic goals in February 2024, and we want to just give you a quick refresher on those and to lay the foundation of the strategic objectives that we're going to talk about. So as you can see from the slide, the goals relate to transportation electrification, distributed energy generation, achieving net zero carbon and the coordinated role of gas, building decarbonization, and climate adaptation. The decision additionally identified several principles that really apply across these goals, most notably principles for equity, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later today. Next slide, please. So the strategic goals that we just talked about really set the framework for developing these more granular strategic objectives. So we're going to walk through the process that informed staff's proposal that included a lot of stakeholder input. So next slide, please. We worked with our EPIC consultant who reached out individually to a broad range of ESJ community representatives, including DACAG members. There were several technical working groups held, and they were established by goal to help develop the strategic objectives. Our consultant did reach out to the DACAG members, in particular the correlated priority groups in which they served. Unfortunately, none of the DACAG members were able to participate in the strategic objectives workshops. However, we wanted to send a special thank you out to Senite Forthall, who did participate in the distributed energy technical working group in San Diego just prior to joining the DACAG, and at that time was representing OC Goes Solar. And while we did have significant ESJ participation in the goals workshops the year previous, that was very helpful. We really heard a lot of the information in the goals workshops, which is part of why maybe not as many folks were able to attend at these strategic objectives workshops. And so we wanted to recognize Andres Ramirez, who presented on the DACAG framework at the strategic goals workshop. We also had significant representation at that San Diego workshop for strategic goals on distributed energy resources and climate adaptation. but less or no participation at our recent San Francisco meetings on transportation electrification, building decarbonization, and getting to net zero carbon. So we want to talk about that more at the end of this presentation in our discussion and find out, how we can really engage members of the DACAG and ESJ community much better and understand any barriers to doing so. So using the approach of these public workshops, both for the strategic goals and for the strategic objectives, really allowed the CPUC to bring in a broad range of stakeholder input. So much broader than people that would normally be involved in CPUC proceedings. So we're trying to cast the wide net, really get the information from the stakeholders that is needed to guide the program. So next slide, please. So this table shows the 13 strategic objectives that came out of the stakeholder strategic objectives workshop process. Across the top of the table are the 5 EPIC strategic goals, which were approved by the Commission in 2023. Each technical working group that we discussed on the last slide came out with a final report. These reports were circulated among the people that participated in the workshops, and then there were subsequent virtual workshops to refine those. After that process, our consultant then refined all the stakeholder input through the process into these 13 strategic objectives that you see listed on the left. Now they cut across, many of them cut across 2 or more of the strategic goals. I would say in general, the first 2 relate to transportation electrification, as you can see by the check marks. Objectives 3 through 6 apply to building decarbonization and many of the other goals. The objectives 7 through 12 apply to managing the grid and of course many other goals. You can see that objectives 6 and 8 actually cut across all 5 of the strategic goals. And finally, let's see, I'm not sure if I said, so 7 through 12 apply to managing the grid and other goals. And then objective 13 applies specifically to climate adaptation. Give you a minute to kind of absorb. I know this is a lot of information, but these are detailed in the staff proposal. Next slide, please. So the staff proposal articulates measurable strategic objectives with example metrics and demonstrates alignment with CPUC proceedings and state goals. After the final report came out from the consultants, synthesizing all of the stakeholder input and putting forth the 13 strategic goals we just looked at, Energy Division staff carefully reviewed and analyzed that report and ensuring that they captured the most pressing issues that were highlighted throughout the process. Staff then did additional research, developing the objectives and mapping them to commission proceedings, as that was not done as part of the workshops. And the result then is the staff proposal, which puts forward also the 13 objectives. So we stayed with the 13, and we'll go over those in the next slide a bit. The proposal also includes an equity and R&D framework with affordability guidance. It proposes a process to implement and measure the strategic goals and objectives, including a public symposia to be held before the EPIC 5 investment plans are submitted. EPIC 5 will run from 2026 through 2030 and will represent almost $1 billion of investment over those 5 years. And finally, the staff proposal proposes a market transformation initiative comparable to the one used in the CPUC's energy efficiency proceeding. So moving to the next slide, we want to show you an example of the strategic objective as it is in the staff proposal. So each of the 13 objectives is formatted in the same way with this table that you see and some additional narrative to explain the details. In this example, staff adopted the strategic objective from the stakeholder synthesis report with no change. So the box on the left shows no modification. If there had been a staff change, the box is split in 2, one side showing the original stakeholder proposal and the second showing what the final staff proposal and explaining why changes were made. The table on the right then shows the related strategic goals, the proceedings related to the objective, and identifies the strategic gap that's addressed by the objective. So really, like, what is the purpose of this objective? Finally, several proposed progress metrics are given. And in this example, all the metrics relate to disadvantaged vulnerable communities, or DVCs. And you can see that these metrics are fairly detailed. And these are example metrics. So more metrics or refined metrics will come out of a public process that we're proposing. And I want to make the point here that the DVC, or disadvantaged vulnerable community, is defined for EPIC as including disadvantaged, low income, and tribal communities. Next slide, please. So this slide and in the next, just want to show some more detail on the equity metrics that are included in the strategic objectives. So staff went through all 13 objectives and pulled out all of the metrics that related to disadvantaged vulnerable communities, and really found, mapped them kind of to notional categories. So these categories listed on the left didn't come necessarily out of the stakeholder process, but affordability, community engagement, and then if you go to the next slide, also deployment, health and safety, reliability, and resiliency really represent a lot of what is the priorities seen in the CPUC ESG action plan, ESG community priorities that we really heard about, and also DACAG's 2024 equity framework. So this is just to give a flavor of how we're looking at quantifying the effect that the EPIC investment will have and is intended to have on DVC communities. So if you'd like to go to the next slide, please. So we mentioned an equity framework and affordability guidance. And on the bottom of the slide here, the table of this equity framework with 5 principles that really came out of the strategic goals process. So we heard the input, we developed that framework, and that was adopted by the commission to guide the strategic objectives process. The staff proposal is now saying, well, let's take this framework and make it official that it is part of EPIC, and it will be a required part to guide future investment plans, including EPIC 5. I already mentioned the extension of AB 523. So I would make the point that when we talk about outreach, the 5th principle, it's not just technology, say education, but really the processes to promote adoption. So simplifying application processes for communities, that we heard from stakeholders, that would be very, very, very helpful. Next slide, please. So the staff proposal includes several elements for ensuring measurable progress. And so I'll just go through those. These include proposals for a public process to develop further metrics and impact analysis, including for equity, a market transformation initiative, as I mentioned, for market facilitation to demonstrate EPIC innovations are scaled and deployed at meaningful scales, because that is the whole point of the program, is to make meaningful impact. We propose a public process to demonstrate investment plan applications are aligned with Commission strategic goals and objectives for EPIC. So this would happen before investment plans are submitted, and give stakeholders, including ESG communities, a chance to provide input before the applications even go into the Commission. And as we did for the strategic goals and objectives workshops, we'll invite a broad range of stakeholders to participate, including the DACAG, of course, and the ESG communities. Next slide, please. So we'll close with a view of the EPIC program timeline for this year. Next slide, please. So the proposed decision may use the staff proposal and comments on it to inform the guidance proposed decision, or the guidance PD. Parties and the DACAG can comment on the staff proposal to inform the PD. And in the middle of the table here, April 18th, we're suggesting the action by the DACAG may be taken as formal comment as late as April 18th. We know that that is your next upcoming voting meeting. So we'll talk about more of that process of providing input in the next slide in a minute. In fact, right now, the next slide, please. So if the DACAG seeks to put formal comments into the EPIC proceeding record to inform the strategic objectives, this process listed on the slide would be the process to use. So the DACAG would develop a letter of comment and approve it at the April 18th voting meeting. Proceeding staff would then distribute that letter to the EPIC service list for awareness of the parties. It would also be placed on the EPIC public informational docket. Staff would notify the assigned commissioner and judge on the proceeding about the letter for their consideration, and that letter would be entered into the record at the discretion of the judge and the assigned commissioner. And if that happens, the judge would then serve the letter officially to the service list via a ruling for comment, and the letter would become part of the formal document as a formal proceeding record. Next slide, please. So additional opportunities for engagement with EPIC. They include continued CPUC presentations at DACAG meetings, seeking timely formal feedback through, say, the letter process that we just mentioned. Of course, presentations from EPIC administrators at the DACAG meeting, seeking informal feedback and guidance. DACAG priority members are welcome to meet with Energy Division staff to provide input on policy and oversight. And DACAG members, priority area members, can also meet with CEC RD&D staff to provide input into their EPIC initiatives. And finally, DACAG members and the ESJ community can participate in public stakeholder meetings, workshops, technical working groups, and symposia. So we appreciate the limited bandwidth that DACAG members and the community has at times, and look forward to your feedback today to understand how we might seek to work with you better on the EPIC proceeding as we develop strategic planning criteria and establish methodologies for measuring impact. So we envision a series of workshops to do that. We'd like to get, make sure we get the input that is needed. So as you provide your feedback today, we look forward to hearing how you'd like to work with us, to hear about any challenges that you have engaging in the process and any feedback you may have. And the next slide, please, and this will be the last slide. So you're always welcome to reach out and contact us to coordinate. You can work directly through Zara, or you can contact Cheryl or myself. Our email addresses are there. And we also show a number of online resources, including access to the staff proposal on our website, and access to the 2023 Strategic Goals Workshop materials, the 2024 Strategic Objectives Workshop, and materials and technical working group reports, and finally a link for official proceeding participation. I think that'll be our last slide, and we go to the discussion. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Fred, thank you so much for your presentation and everything it took to get to this point. Before we ask the DACAG for questions and comments, we will turn it over for public comment.
Thank you. DACAG now welcomes public comment on item 6. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and we'll alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those on WebEx, use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and press *6 to mute and unmute. For those in the room, raise your hand and then we'll call on you. So yes.
Okay, yeah, so I do have a little comment, and it might be wrong, but I just want to kind of say one. All right, so I think one of the issues with DAC is that the DAC or GP RFPs put up by LSEs usually have a megawatt limit because they're paying a higher rate for that megawatt rate. So developers only build to that megawatt limit to reap the indirect state subsidies that are going through the intermediary of the load serving entity. So for example, while I was working in energy procurement at PG&E and East Bay Community Energy, at that time we could be paying double or triple the megawatt cost for DAC programs. However, having like a neat solar panel in a neighborhood doesn't necessarily help that community, right? Some are also gaming the market by building in DAC communities just to sell the RA and REC and often generate negative energy costs. I think the priority of the California energy market is to provide sustained capacity at an affordable rate. That's how I understand the goal to be. So having geographically local generators does this, but it's artificial. potentially ineffective. So I think we should create more of like a disadvantaged zone, maybe a 50-mile radius, depending on the transmission capacity of that region, right? So having a larger region to build stuff allows developers to build maybe like 5 to 50 megawatt generators versus like half a megawatt, 5 megawatt generators within those specific neighborhoods. So that kind of solves the capacity issue. Second, like I feel like the subsidy should go straight to the consumers, even at a more egregious discount in the current CARE Act, right? So I lived a few years at or below the poverty line during grad school in Montana, and I feel that any disadvantaged communities would much rather have a lower bill than having like a high-tech specific energy project in their neighborhood. So I feel like finally by providing us some subsidies directly to the consumer instead of like sending it to the LSE for them to procure RFP bids, it just provides more value because we're just cutting out the middleman of the LSE and so directly towards Californians.
Thank you. Let's check and see if there are any comments on WebEx. Richard, you should be able to be, I think you're unmuted. You can give your comment. Oh, it looks like you've muted.
Hey, thank
Hi.
you very much. Look, all of these programs we're talking about rely heavily upon the use of solar and or storage devices in the community. And recently the commission approved California's largest solar plus storage, the $300 million residential solar and storage program. However, there are characteristics of that DAC communities, in particular DAC communities, are disadvantaged to participate, and others are discouraged from going into those communities. And in particular, the Commission for Low-Income Customers offered significant incentives so that the low-income customer that is not able to make a contribution of their own can essentially get this at no cost. However, what they also did is they said that they would reduce the rebate, the incentive that's given, by the 30% investment tax credit that they get. So that means the customer has to come up with a $9,000 copay at the beginning in order to get a $30,000 solar plus storage system. Now, they came up with an alternative to that. So they said, look, if you don't able to pay that, then you can go into a program called third-party ownership, where the low-income family gives up their ownership of the equipment and gives up the other things. In return, the TPO, corporate third-party owner, will pay off the rest of the cost, which is a pretty good deal. And however, the commission order program says that anyone who is eligible for a tax credit must take the tax credit off of there. So if unfortunately, if you're a corporation and doing this in a DAC low-income community, which is basically the DAC communities, they also get another 20% tax credit. So that means they lose an additional $6,000. So by operating in DAC, they would lose the $6,000. And even if they can recover it, they basically get 80 to 90% of the tax credit that they can sell to somebody else. Plus they have a lot of bureaucratic hassles to get that done. So they have a choice between getting all of not getting that $6,000 reduction and working outside of DAC, or go into DAC and lose the 6,000, which they then have to sell that credit a year later for 60 or 80% of its face value. Plus, it reduces the upfront advance that they'd be eligible to for under any circumstances. So what I'd like the DAC Community Commission to do is to take a look at this, and if it's worthwhile, to give your recommendations on this to the people that are managing the program.
Thank you.
Again, this targets only the DAC communities.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on WebEx? Seeing none, I'll turn it back to you, Julia.
Okay, thank you so much for those two comments. It's always good to have more public engagement in these conversations. Does anybody, before the DACAG turns to our conversation, does anyone have any follow-up or comments for our commenters? Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of questions for Fred, but let's hear from other folks on the DACAG first. What questions and comments do you have for Fred? I'm not necessarily seeing all the raised hands.
I see that Elena has her hand up.
Okay, great. Just go for it.
Okay. I realized I actually did have one comment for the person that was in the audience.
Great.
Which is that I think some of your comments actually align with some of the discussions that we've had on the DACAG, which is trying to ensure that investments in disadvantaged communities actually benefit disadvantaged communities rather than just being located in disadvantaged communities. So we've been having some conversations with agency staff to try to record those investments and whether or not we can actually track benefits in addition to just sort of locational investments. And so we'll see what those say, and hopefully we can sort of move forward and better design programs based on some of those findings. Fred, thank you for your presentation. I had a couple questions. I'll just start with the first one, which is somewhere near the beginning, you said something about trying to engage a broader range of stakeholders beyond those who generally show up at these to participate in these kinds of processes. And I was wondering if you've measured if that works and how you did that. Like, did you succeed in managing to reach out and get representation from a broader range of groups?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the answer is yes, we did succeed, and though there can always be more. So my observation is that the planning of the EPIC portfolio has been fairly close to the administrators that are doing the planning and people that say, want to invest in projects, so that there's kind of a fairly close group of people that I say, kind of follow this and want to give input. And we really, the commission wanted to bring in people from, say, Department of Energy, so federal government level. We didn't have any international participation this time, but really to reach out to, say, the large manufacturers, the agricultural community, in the EPIC purview, like when EPIC was started, there's a huge list of stakeholders that we really want to hear from. And in my observations over the last 5 years, haven't seen the type of participation that was envisioned. And it really takes, those are the folks, they're not going to be on a party list or get any, service announcement. We have to reach out to them. So we really did a lot of work to, reach out to and announce that this whole process was going on. Let's get people in. And so we specifically had speakers come in, that aren't normally parties to the proceeding, and say, in the strategic objectives, we had Andres present. And so, I think we did do a lot of work to do that. And kind of and Cheryl, I see Cheryl popping up. So maybe you may like to make a comment on the strategic objectives process and involvement there.
Thanks, Fred. I'll just kind of build off some of what you were saying in terms of Elena's questions about how we reached out. We really tried to be a little bit more curated to the extent we could. I would say we're building a list that would hopefully continue and be more pervasive. And So, and I think the typical, right, is the service list, and those are parties, and being a party can be very challenging and have its own barriers. And so we really reached out, as Fred had noted earlier. We have a consultant facilitator that we work with, and so they were very dedicated and really targeted on the ESJ communities. Also, you know, we reached out to them, or work with them, I should say, to show how the DACAG is set up and how you are opted into various priority groups so they could really reach out and have those conversations about joining. But I think even curated inviting, I think we also tried to invite people to be on panels so that they're actively participating. And a lot of that curation beyond the service list also goes to, it allows us as staff, as we're helping to build the record through this process and building a staff proposal, we can attach all of that to our staff proposal, all the videos, all the presentations. And that's another way of bringing all of that input into the record without stakeholders having to be parties. So it's a start, because I think it's a foundation to keep building off of. Like, I'll give an example, even though it's kind of different, it was in the climate adaptation proceeding. We work with Senite. We wanted to bring in more of a local government experience, and we know she works with the city of Irvine, and we coordinated with her to get set up in meetings down there and reach out to other, you know, so that we're kind of being in both the northern and the southern part of the state. So, like I said, it's a process. It's not perfect, but I think it's the goal of continuing to build those relationships.
Thank you.
Other questions? Folks can just dive in since I can't see hands.
Tonight?
Yeah, hi. Fred, nice to see you. Cheryl, good to see you. And thanks for the acknowledgement. I definitely enjoyed participating in the San Diego workshop. But I think the comment I want to make is, if the EPIC program is going to continue involve local communities, you know, throughout the R&D process, I think there has to be a lot more effort in inviting and engaging these local communities we're talking about. As Fred mentioned, you know, attendance was not that big, especially in the Bay Area. And my take on this is because resources are so limited. I mean, I went to San Diego and I had an assumption that my expenses were going to be reimbursed. And then later I found out that the program was discontinued. So there was no fund to cover any expenses. So I would have loved to go to the San Diego workshop or followed these discussions and workshops, but that meant I had to pay for it. I had to not only give up my time, also, you know, so travel expenses, food expenses, you know, whatever is involved. So how do you ensure that there is this community engagement when there is no compensation for the people that would be participating?
Yeah, that's interesting to understand about the compensation. I mean, tonight you and I talked about this like right afterwards, right? Because at the time we were really working with our consultant to make sure that ESJ community representatives knew about the CPUC grant program and that was possible. But not long after that, the program was closed. And so we would have looked to that. We don't know whether that might be continued at some point in the future. We know that, you know, like for that program, Julia had also offered some comments on her experiences with that. And I'm sure those kind of comments would go into if there were anything potential in the future. But those barriers are something that, you know, that we think about. I think the utilities think about them. Just in the presentation you saw earlier with Stephen, climate adaptation is also in my section, and Commissioner Houck is the lead commissioner. And the utilities there do seek to have compensation for their advisory groups that help on that. And so in some ways they're kind of piloted. And I think we have talked about this, and the engagement part for community adaptation is, you know, how do we make that more widespread when there are so many different proceedings that, again, are going and asking the same community members to participate in all these various, right? Because, you know, bandwidth itself, outside of even compensation, potentially being a challenge.
Well, just to add that the utilities, I was invited to attend the CAVA discussion also. And I remember being in one of the meetings, and I was told that the utilities have no compensation for anybody who is attending. You can look into CPUC if there is any compensation, but we don't have any funding. That was
I think
what
it might have been that particular utility that you work with. I think some of them do, so it may just vary.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's not, I'm not bringing this up just for my own reason, but it's just like, how do we encourage community engagement when there is no compensation, when we know there is a need for that in the communities?
The only thing I will note, and the timing is that when our consultant was reaching out to people individually for EPIC and telling about these grants, walking them through how to apply for them when they were available, we still got no takers. So I think it may be more complex than that, including with bandwidth. You know, I'm sure you all can appreciate you have your regular everyday responsibilities and then this. And so I think that's the thing, is we're struggling with that too, in terms of how, you know, do we get people to get involved when there are all these different challenges?
Yeah. I know that's very difficult, but I think it just doesn't help when there are no resources either. So I don't know if you can make that happen, but you know, but it's
Well,
it's
I
a
think
big
it's
area.
really important to have it out there that you know, that maybe there would be another program in the future. So I think definitely continuing to talk about it and to hear from you all that is one part at addressing it is important to hear.
Right.
Adelina.
Another question if no one else wants to go. I admit that the slide that had all the check marks on it went by a little quickly for me, but it seemed that there were a bunch of categories on like DERs that didn't include how they could be used to reach the state's climate goals. It was mostly around things like resiliency and other things like that. Maybe I missed that. I was wondering how you're thinking about the value of DERs in terms of reaching those statewide climate and energy targets.
Well, that's a great question. And yeah, certainly that was a complex slide. Clearly, you know, we're looking at clean distributed energy resources. So, you know, the ability to offset the fossil fuel resources. So, and it's, you know, solar was mentioned by one of the callers, certainly a huge thing in California, but, you know, there are a number of resources. And so the more of those can be integrated both, you know, at the larger generation level, but at the distributed level in the microgrid type of applications and, you know, remote applications, you know, just in general, that is going to help. So it's the combination of, you know, looking at the building decarb to reduce the load overall, so the emissions there, and then, you know, the more renewable clean energy we can have, along with some storage to help balance that. That's one of the benefits the fossil fuels have is more availability over time. So I think that if you know, have a chance to look into the proposal and kind of looking at the proceedings that each of these objectives is tied to, it's kind of more apparent. But yeah, we're casting a wide net, you know, in terms of, you know, meeting these long-term climate goals. There's a number of things that need to happen along the way, and so you know, this is what came out of our public process. And perhaps if different people were in the room, we would have gotten, you know, different information. But you know, we're trying to really get the input, and of course the administrators, particularly the CEC with 80% of the portfolio, you know, have a deep knowledge of, you know, generation and how to reach climate goals, and so their input was received and will continue to be received, certainly throughout the comments that we expect to get on the proposed on the staff proposal. So the proposal went out, but we are certainly want to hear from people that have, you know, different ideas, better ideas or, the nuances to like, how do you target certain things? And that's why we'd really like to get, if possible, the DACAG input entered into the record if that's desired.
Right. So thanks, Fred. That was really the timing, wanting to make sure that we came and talked to you at the right time while the record's still open, while you could influence, because the staff proposal we expect would inform the proposed decision because it comes out of and describes the stakeholder process that was the record. And so now there is an opportunity to still for stakeholders or parties in this case, because we're now in the formal part of the proceeding, to comment and add any additions or any kind of comments on the proposal. And that's why Fred was describing that the DACAG has the same opportunity to join in the record if that's interesting too.
I just pulled up the slide so I could take a look at that. Thank you. And so I guess my direct comment would be that I don't see here in this part on the, and maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but there's the providing data input into a value of DER framework. And that isn't written as something that supports achieving 100% net zero carbon. And so I guess finding a way
I can articulate on that goal a little bit, and then it might make more sense. So let's see, the achieving 100% net zero carbon strategic goal relates, a lot of it is kind of industrial decarbonization and what is the role of gas. So that particular goal is looking at, as we move forward, trying to really decarbonize society, how do we, reduce fossil fuels, natural gas in particular, and so this idea of the net zero carbon is really about that. And so, as you see, a number of the objectives relate to that process. One of the things that we don't have right now that we're hopefully working toward is better communication between gas R&D that is funded by ratepayers, or I guess through the GRC, Cheryl, so funded by taxpayers, and the EPIC
public
fund,
EPIC public purpose.
Yeah, EPIC is a public purpose fund, and the gas R&D is also public funds. The two, because of their different funding mechanisms and different procedural mechanisms, kind of legally almost don't talk to each other. And so when we're looking at, let's say clean hydrogen is something that is going to turn out to be a good solution, that involves the electric sector and it involves the gas sector, and we need to coordinate on those. Otherwise, resources are being wasted, and we're probably taking longer and maybe having unintended consequences. So this strategic goal kind of tries to get at that, and how can we think broadly about that whole issue.
And I think, Fred, you mean like being kind of more targeted, right, to that last amount of net zero that may be the most difficult.
That goal is really
to decarbonize.
What's the last 10% of decarbonization? That's the hard stuff to do, and someone will argue, oh, well, 90% is good enough. And that's why I mentioned the industrial decarb, because when you have, say, high temperature processes, and we're making, iron and steel and pharmaceuticals and other things, and you need really high temperatures, and gas has traditionally been used for that. That's what that particular goal is looking at. So the overarching climate goals of California are really embedded in all of these. So all the strategic goals aim at that, and all of the objectives aim toward that as well.
I guess the thing that I would add is that, there are a bunch of technologies sort of under development, and I think some of them are becoming commercial. To think about, let's say, high temperature thermal storage that would enable some of the industrial processes to store energy, serve as a behind the meter, distributed energy resource, maybe participate in some kind of demand response, and enable that 100% decarbonization, and would contribute to that value of DERs. And I think that I think it would be useful to make sure that is integrated to some degree into the process.
That's a great comment, and that's why we want to continue to get comments into the process. So when even we're going through the objectives, and there'll be comments on those, and then there'll be the proposed decision and comments on those, and then there are the actual EPIC 5 investment plans, and can be comments on those. So all the way through, that kind of, and I certainly agree with that. I've been interested in, say, concentrating solar power and the ability to develop, very high temperatures, and the ability to use waste heat in industrial settings, even low-grade waste heat can now be turned into electricity. So there's a lot of great inventions out there that need to be commercialized, but there's also a lot of technology that exists. And that's what we're looking at. You know, the EPIC program has made many innovations, and it's getting those innovations scaled into the marketplace, into the communities, affordable. You know, there's all these dimensions to work on. So, but very good point. Well taken.
Yeah. And I think in particular, given that a lot of them have some could have very flexible loads and some could have very inflexible loads, right? So some of those behind the meter mechanisms to either smooth out, you know, heat or electricity consumption, I think could play an important role.
Yeah, thank you. Great suggestion.
Thanks.
So other comments, questions?
I had two questions. One is about the use of the DVC as the acronym. You said it's disadvantaged vulnerable communities. There are just so many, we've talked about this before, so many different definitions floating out there, and there's the definition within the ESJ framework. In the energy efficiency proceedings, you have hard to reach and underserved. Like, how are all of these working together or not when it comes to this work?
That is a great question. I think I'm going to kind of let Cheryl take that, but I wanted to look at had a footnote to the definition. So you know, we did look at that. Part of I think that when the say AB 523 is specific to DACs and low income, it doesn't call out tribes. DVC includes tribes. So that is part of the reason that the EPIC wanted to include that. But yeah, there's a lot of discussion about what is the right term. Do we use priority communities? But sure, I think this is more in your wheelhouse to address this.
Well, I would just say it's the definition in the proceeding, right? So it's sort of formal. Other proceedings like the climate adaptation proceeding also use the DVC definition. I mean, I think it's a good point to think about consistency where it's relevant. But some proceedings might look at being broader as useful, and some might look at being targeted is more useful. So I think that's where it is appropriately vetted in each proceeding, but we certainly do talk across Energy Division with our other colleagues on equity policy issues like this. But the DVC was chosen in some of the original founding decisions for EPIC that defined.
Was that before the ESJ action plan then?
Probably. I don't know, Fred, if you know.
What's actually interesting is when EPIC was formed in 2011 and 2012, while there was, you know, kind of the notion of equity, it wasn't really called out very specifically. And the CEC really started, it came out with a report, I think it was in 2017, that then led to AB 523. And that was actually the first time that EPIC used the term disadvantaged community, DAC, and low income community. And so that is when that kind of officially became part of EPIC. And then as we move forward, and I was looking for my, I think it was a 2023 decision when we were incorporating equity more broadly and bringing the IOUs into that I remember looking at what term do we use, you know, and for a while we would like spell out the whole thing, and then of course.
Well, I think the terms are a little bit different than when actually DVC was defined in the proceeding. So I think those are kind of two different approaches.
DVC I was just curious because you were referencing the ESJ action plan that has a specific definition that's inclusive of tribes, I believe. So, and I mean, it sounds like they're overlapping. What we'd want to avoid is any unintentional exclusion, or, you know, like sometimes those definitions get cumbersome, and it sounds like there's overlap. The other question I had is, you had mentioned, and then we'll take any more questions and we'll wrap this one up. You mentioned that the subject matter expert outreach to the DACAG was challenging to get people. I'm wondering when that outreach happened and which specific SME groups you reached out to.
So our consultant was the one doing the reaching out. So I wasn't part of that. I don't know exactly who was contacted. I imagine all of the relevant groups. And this was, we had scheduled the, the meetings several months in advance. So it was well planned out. So that would have been, I would think at least 2 to 3 months before the meetings, so people have time to plan things. But I don't have the details, and we could probably get back to you on that if you were interested to, find out, who do we talk to, what, we could get more information.
Yeah, I was working with our consultant related to that. And you're right, Fred, they did try and give sufficient lead time, but they were also going down to the wire just to make sure, to keep contacting people. And it would have been anyone in the EPIC SME or, priority group, and anyone related to any of the 5 goals. And you can see the 5 goals are pretty broad.
Yeah, I don't remember. I could be totally forgetting it. I was curious because I just don't remember getting anything.
Yeah, and when was the first technical working group, Fred? Do you remember like when that was? Because that would give the time frame. Was it last summer?
It's escaping.
We've had a lot of workshops in the last
my
year
head.
or more.
Yeah, I don't have that in my head at the moment. So we can follow up with you on that.
Great.
Yeah, certainly we want to make sure people are getting contacted and have the lead time, and that we're talking to the right people.
Sounds good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Any final questions for Fred? Okay, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for your time and your presentation.
Yep.
And team, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We're going to be back at 2:50, and we'll see you then. Thank you. If people going to go ahead and get started in just a minute. Starting to see folks come back to the room. Okay, I think we will go ahead and move forward. We are a little bit behind on the agenda, and moving on to item 8, this was the DACAG 2024 annual report. We talked about this a little bit at the last meeting, and Sarah had courageously volunteered to take that on. We don't have any updates on that, so we're actually going to skip this item and go ahead and come back to it at the next meeting. We'll make sure when we discuss the agenda that this is on the agenda for our April meeting. So that takes us to item 9 and also gets us back on track time-wise. So we are here now on item 9, priority areas. You can see the priority areas and the assigned individuals here. And we're going to hear any updates and announcements regarding these priority areas or any associated activities. Does anybody have any updates to share? And I have one once everyone else is gone. And again, I for some reason cannot see hands, so just go for it. Okay, I will go then. Let's see. Last it was the Building Electrification Summit. I think it was 2 weeks ago now that the CEC held a couple days summit. I had the opportunity to put my Rising Sun hat on and present on a panel regarding workforce. And specifically, we were talking about the importance of job quality and union jobs as well within decarbonization and the impact of ensuring that decarb jobs are good jobs on the economy, on individuals, but then also the effect on meeting California's climate goals. And I think so I was joined by a small residential union contractor who does sheet metal work, a representative from Southland, which is a large union construction company, one of Rising Sun's graduates, who is also a sheet metal worker now, and one other representative from sheet metal. And one of the things that I think really came across in that presentation was the fact that to meet these climate goals, these appropriately aggressive climate goals that California has, it's not simply about getting as many, heat pumps installed as quickly as possible. We also have to make sure that those heat pumps are installed correctly and appropriately if we're going to actually realize the energy benefits from them. And also we need enough workers to do the job. And one key mechanism for employing folks is to make sure, and retaining folks is to make sure they're paid fairly. So I think it was a good conversation, and really appreciate the CEC having that space to bring labor in and community organizations in to talk about those issues. Anybody else? Okay. Moving on to item 10, Low Income Oversight Board. The current Low Income Oversight Board lead is Roman. I believe he is back from sabbatical as of Monday, but he was unable to attend this meeting. He's getting caught up. So we will hear updates on this at a future meeting. And that brings us right to item 11, which is agency announcements. And I will start with any updates or announcements from the CPUC.
Hi, Julia. This is Zara from the CPUC. The announcement that I wanted to make is that the California Climate Credit will be distributed in April. So all residents with an active account in an investor-owned utility should receive it, including anyone on sub-meters, so folks in apartments and mobile homes and such. So yeah, look forward to that. And that's all from me. I don't know if Cheryl or Judith have any other items they want to bring up.
I don't have items.
Thank you. Yeah, that's it from the CPUC.
Great, thank you. That's always a fun month to get that credit back. CEC updates or announcements.
Hi there, Julia. Hi, everyone. So for CEC, just restating again a few things that were mentioned earlier. On March 17th, 2025, CEC voted to create, the commission voted to create a tribal proceedings supporting tribal energy sovereignty. And we'll bring more information on that in the coming months or in future meetings. There you go. On the following day, on the 18th, CEC hosted the Tribal Energy Summit. And so we'll link that so folks can see presentation that went out, and then some of the folks that were there and the topics that were discussed. And then as was mentioned, and probably will be mentioned again, I'll leave Aretha to mention the Clean Energy Hall of Fame Awards, but just wanted to shout that out again, and we'll put links in chat. And then lastly, we have a grant funding opportunity for paving the way for California's gas transition. The solicitation supports research into the challenges and requirements for transitioning California's residential and commercial sectors away from utility gas use, that's piped gas. So I'll put those in chat and you'll see those come up in the newsletter as well, in addition to CPUC's updates. So I'll pass it to Aretha.
Thank you, Dorothy. Hello, everyone. My name is Aretha Welch, and I just wanted to bring to you some information about an upcoming workshop we're having. It's going to be the second workshop in our JEDI informational proceeding, and it's titled Inclusive Pathways, Enhancing Policy and Program Input from Communities. It's going to be held on April 3rd from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's a hybrid workshop, so it will be held on Zoom and at our CNRA headquarters in the CNRA auditorium on 715 P Street. And the overall objective of this workshop and purpose is to identify specific opportunities for the CEC to improve its processes and practices for receiving early input from justice communities on our programs and policy proceedings. The workshop aims to develop strategies for making public participation in our processes more accessible and inclusive. And the goal is to ensure that diverse voices meaningfully shape our policies and decision-making while making engagement efforts more efficient for both the public and our CEC employees. And we have a few people on the panel. So on the dais, we're going to have Commissioner Gallardo, who's the lead commissioner for JEDI efforts, as well as Noaki Schwartz, who is the Deputy Secretary for Equity and Environmental Justice at CNRA. We are also going to have Commissioner Darcy Hauk from the CPUC and Mr. Cliff Rechtschaffen from CARB. And we've also asked Roman Partida Lopez to participate in under his greenlining hat. We will soon have confirmation on that. Julia is also going to be part of that workshop. She's going to be helping present in relation to her workforce expertise, etc., in relation to Rising Sun. And we're going to have 5 panels featuring different state representatives talking about best practices and some members of CBOs. So that's it in relation to that. And in relation to the Hall of Fame, we are wrapping up the nomination period. It's going to wrap up on April 4th. So if you want to get in any nominations for Hall of Fame awardees for the 2025 cohort, please make sure and send those in within the next 2 weeks. You can visit our website and check out the information form there. I also dropped it in the chat earlier, and I will drop the Zoom information for the workshop that I just talked about in the chat also. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thanks, Aretha. I'm looking forward to that. Any other updates? Okay, that takes us to item 12, agenda setting and attendance. So I would love to hear if there are any topics that members would like to propose for future DACAG meetings. This could be for the next meeting. This could be any other time this year. If there's a specific time frame that you want something discussed, please share that as well. And I will start just with a list that I've got here. We have had a request for a Solar for All presentation. We are planning to hear more about SB 100 at the June meeting, but our specific request on that is to hear about NEIs or non-energy impacts for SB 100. So that has been requested. We've also asked for opportunities to hear about that and weigh in before the public comment period, so that we can get those comments in prior during the development of it. Tribal energy sovereignty is one that's come up a couple times in this meeting. Any impacts or expected impacts of the governor's executive order from back in November on energy affordability would be great to hear. And then I sent out an email. We are always looking for member presentations. It's really a great opportunity to share more about your work and expertise and what you bring to the DACAG, and for us to get to know folks better. So I will be continuing to look for volunteers for that. Other than those topics, is there anything else that I missed or that people would like to add to that list? Okay, that sounds like plenty. And if you, just a request from staff, if there are meetings that you know now that you will not be able to attend, please reach out to Zara and Dorothy to let them know. It's really helpful for us to be able to plan in advance, and that way if we need to move some things around, we can, or we can plan in advance around any voting items. So please do look at your calendars in advance and let us know about any conflicts that you might have. Oh, and then a last reminder, thank you, Stephanie, for putting this on my radar. Form 700, I believe, is due April 1st from each DACAG member. That is where we disclose any conflicts of interest, I believe. So does anyone on the staff side have anything additional to say about that? About Form 700? Okay, well, maybe we'll get a reminder in our emails, so watch for that. All right, and that takes us to item 13, which is general public comment regarding any items on or off the agenda related to the DACAG.
Thank you. This public comment period is an opportunity for attendees to give comments regarding any matters related to the DACAG or today's agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and we'll alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those on WebEx, use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those of you joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and then press *6 to mute and unmute. For those in the room, raise your hand and then we will call on you. Yes?
Okay, yeah, I have a comment. So I think what Brett said was low participation. I think one of the reasons low participation is that in California, there's probably only around 40 developers who are really qualified to build 10 megawatt or larger generators. So it's not like you can't get people to come. It's people who see up the stuff and like, wow, I'm not qualified for that. So that's another issue. That's it.
State your name for the record, please.
Oh, my name is Jason Dang.
Thank you. Now we'll turn to WebEx. If there are any raised hands. We have a raised hand from Brianna Ancona. You should be able to unmute.
Hi, sorry, not too sure if the timer was going to be put on screen or not, but I just wanted to make a simple comment on one of the points brought up about wording regarding disadvantaged vulnerable communities. It's my understanding and a lot of other CBO's understandings that people who live and reside in that area don't favor that term because it makes them seem helpless, right? These people are very resilient people, and I think that's just one thing to be brought up, as opposed to, you know, various different definitions. Additionally, just general feedback. I've made this comment before, but I think that if you want more people to come participate in different events, different stakeholder events, we need to make it more accessible online for people to even find the meeting link. takes about 6 to 8 different clicks to get to the web page itself and the document that allows you to actually get onto the meeting. And additionally, in the past, a lot of these meetings were put on Zoom, and then you transition to WebEx. And it's also difficult to find a link to the newsletter. People refer to the newsletter, but it's difficult to find them. So if you would like more people to attend these meetings, attend other stakeholder meetings, either held by the IOUs or CPUC or CEC, whatnot, it needs to be more readily accessible online. So I yield the rest of my time, and thank you.
Thank you. We have another raised hand from Richard Esteves.
Thank you. I've already spoken once, so I'll keep this very short. The working group that's in charge of the solar and storage program has no representatives from low-income community, even though they've got a $300 million budget specifically targeted exclusively to that community. And you may want to think about suggesting that 1 or 2 representatives of the low-income community be nominated to go on that working group, so that they will have an ongoing perspective. Not necessarily they can outvote, the people that are there, but just to, have a point of view that's not all utilities. It'd be like having the DAC program with nothing but utility people on there and 1 outside representative from the Energy Commission. Just for your thoughts, and hope that it be of interest to somebody. Thank you.
Richard, which working group is that again?
It's called the SGIP working group.
Okay.
It's the 27 people the last time I found out. 24 of them were utility employees or the employees of one of the 3 consultants that the utilities hired. There are up to 3 energy division people that sit on that. So that's it. And it's not that these people are not trying to do a good job. They just don't have a perspective as to what's happening. They spent the last 5 years dealing with upper middle income people, and now all of a sudden they're trying to deal with low income people. And they just,
Thank you. That's helpful to hear. I mean, helpful to know. And Brianna, thank you also for your comments. We've talked a lot about the term disadvantaged and its application to this group in our work. We addressed it somewhat in our updated equity framework, and we still haven't really resolved it in terms of the name of the group. We have been trying to use terms like priority communities in our conversations, even if we can't necessarily change the name of this group at this time. But thank you for mentioning that. And then thank you also for the very specific recommendation around just navigating through websites and accessibility of what's on there. Thank you both.
Seeing no more raised hands, I'll turn it back to you, Julia.
Okay. That takes us to item 14, which is adjournment. We are adjourning here at 3:12 p.m. Our next meeting is Friday, April 18th from 1 to 4 p.m. via Zoom. I think the difference in the WebEx versus the Zoom is when the CPUC versus the CEC is hosting. So for anyone curious about that, but thank you everyone so much for your time and comments today. Have a great weekend, and we will see you in a month. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.